Session 3 and 4 taught by Dr. Reams and Black in 1977. This is tape 9 side B.
This and everything. Well, of course, Dr. Reams handled just parts of the sclera in his analysis of his numbers because his eyes, his one eye he lost in the war and his other eye was not really that good. And when he was talking about the sclera and eventually going to teach it and everything, why, I don't even think that he realized that the sclera, it can be just as complex as can the iris of the eye, but it's really rewarding. Eventually you'll get to the point where that instead of, when you map those vessels on an eye, you'll be able to look down at that particular eye and you'll be able to pick out the big, main, prominent pluses, see exactly where they're laying, and you'll be able to see the areas of congestion and what they represent, and you'll be able to look down there and you'll be able to look at those numbers and see where they're coming from, or how much stress is located in one particular area, and then turn right around and look at the iris of that eye and determine the areas that are inherently weak in that particular system and where the toxicity has built up, and check that eye for drug spots, and if they're there, find out what kind of drug it was from the person, and know whether or not you're going after a coal tar derivative or an alkaloid or whatever, and eventually then begin to get a really good overall picture of where that person stands and what organs that you're going to have to start worrying about in that body. And eventually in the classes, why then we could begin to tell you how to feed these things, because a lot of these organs, like special diets, which they would. They have their own millimicronage, millimicronage, and micronage. Now there's another thing is that up at I have developed and have dug out a bunch of other tests, super simple tests, okay, that go with the urine. To the point is right now is that we can not only tell you if the body is utilizing vitamin C, we can tell you at what rate it is utilizing it and whether or not you have to increase it or decrease the dosage. We can tell you how much kidney clearance on vitamin C is, and we can tell you how much the body is retaining of the stuff. And we've also got tests now that we can tell you what the B vitamins are doing, what the body's doing with them. We have tests now that can give you an idea of how much actual cellular breakdown is going on. We've got tests that will tell you if in fact any protein is coming through the kidney. And eventually you guys will have a laboratory that will look like Dr. Frankenstein's, and you will be able to evaluate these people to the point where that you will, it just, from what I know right now compared to what I'm teaching you that you can pick up from the eye and from the test that you're presently working on, you cannot believe what's still there to learn, and it's really fantastic. So there's all kinds of good things that you can apply that are no more illegal than the test you're currently doing,
Thank you very much.
That's all they're saying is there's the vessel, that they were in doubt of that particular vessel. And so, I've always mentioned, if you're in doubt as to whether or not that vessel should be mapped or not, don't bother. Okay? No, don't worry about it. We're interested in one thing. Those vessels significant enough to map that are red, and those vessels who have formed certain configurations or have turned dark, purplish, and raised, which we plus, or those areas that are covering a discolored area, which we plus by nature. So those are the things we're interested in. A lot of these people are. I got a card just recently in the mail asking for help, and it had something like about 30 or 40 minuses and all this stuff all the way across there. And basically speaking, don't worry about it. Okay, just map those vessels that are significant. Okay. A third of the eye or a complete zone? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And if it goes long enough, they'll become confluent. And you may see an entire zone C, just as yellowish brown as can be. You may see an entire zone C over here on this side, either inside or outside. Now the thing of it is, of course, that the whole eye can go that color. And of course, when this happens, then you're dealing with jaundice, or icterus, or liver failure, or hepatitis, either a fulminating, or an SI, or a IH, or a liver cancer, or whatever. And one of the things is that so many people fail to realize is a lot of liver cancers are missed. until the person dies because of the fact that they think they're dealing with a hepatitis, an inflammation of the liver, because they see the characteristic jaundice patterns, and in reality the liver is so cancerous that it's so badly scarred, you know, that the liver sinusoids are not functioning any longer. So yeah, they can become confluent. Yeah, indeed. In fact, many times on long-established female problems, the whole eye will have a bluish cast. The whole sclera, for instance. Sometimes when the spleen on people who are leukemics, you'll see an almost totally bluish cast of the eye because the spleen has become so badly damaged from the extensive drug therapy on the leukemics, and the fact that the spleen on a leukemic, frequently you can find it on the right side of the body below the umbilicus. It's extended that big, and it's clear down into here. And yeah, and you'll find that happening. Mm-hmm. No, what's happening is it's just toxic material in the blood that is being deposited. Now the thing is it's not just being deposited in the eye. It's being deposited in the brain. It's being deposited in the linings of the organs. It's being deposited in the sinusoids of the liver, of the thymus gland. It's being deposited in the lymphatic system. It's being deposited all over. Eventually, it will become a low-grade irritant. Mm-hmm. Yes. I have not, in my studies, I have not come across one or anyone who has made any reference to one having just porcelain spots in it. I'll keep my eyes open for it. You know, that's not a pun, by the way. But I'll keep a lookout for anyone that you know that may have come across any of that. Okay, he just said, what if you had just a small area on the eye that looked like it was porcelain? You know, just a very, very small area on the eye that looked like it was porcelain. I would say at this particular point, and I don't know, but I would say at this particular point, if you had an area on the eye that was porcelain looking, that I would check to see if that eye had been damaged at any time, and that really is scar tissue laying in there, either a stick in the eye or got poked in the eye or something, because to the best of my knowledge, and I've studied as long and hard as I can study on the sclera for many, many months, and I've dug things out from England, dug things out from China, dug things out from Japan, dug things out, you know, from the American Indians and various other things, and then spent the time and effort trying to correlate them. But I have not heard of any mention to date of porcelain spots on an eye. Where was it on the eye, specifically? You probably saw a pinguicula. Okay, so check your anatomy book. Probably saw a pinguicula. So check your anatomy book and pick up on it. Yeah, that's just what he was saying, and I said, you know, so I said that's probably what you came up with. Okay, now as I said, you know, just a minute ago, if you've got a totally yellow sclera, why, suspicion some degree of jaundice. Now, you've got the squared vessels in the eye that can be in either eye, and some people call them squared vessels, some people call them diamond vessels, whatever, but anyway, they're real super simple to see. And what happens is this: you begin to see a vessel that looks like it's going from 9 o'clock toward 12, or vice versa. But anyway, you begin to see these vessels starting to almost form a square. You're starting to see these vessels almost forming a square or a diamond in the sclera. Now this can be in either eye, okay, or both eyes. Now some of you probably cannot remember the show and tell night we had with the eyes, but there was one of these in that pile. And one of these days, Dr. Reams is talking about having an examination. Well, it has been decided that I are going to write it. And anyway, one of the things that I have very strongly considered, and Will over there, Curly, wherever he went to, anyway, he has taken some shots of the eye that's real good, and we have set up a camera system that is virtually, you know, super inexpensive. I think the whole thing's like $500, and that includes the camera and the lenses and everything else, and we're getting some super good shots of the eye. We've got some retractors that open it up and everything like that, so the eye is right there. And so I've been thinking about possibly trying to match every one of these patterns over a period of time, and then in one of the quizzes in the future, give you a pattern and say, what would you suspicion, or what would be your significant thought if you saw this particular pattern on an eye? I think that would be a lot of fun, by the way. But anyway, Whenever you see this thing squaring around an eye, whenever you see it squaring or diamonding, I refer to the word as squaring, around the eye, there is significant, and I mean a lot of, tissue breakdown in the system. There's a lot, and I mean a lot, of tissue breakdown in that system whenever you see that eye square up that way, or both of them square up that way. Now, this tissue breakdown can take a lot of different forms, from tissue breakdown of just degenerative or chronicity in the system, to tissue breakdown that has been brought about by years of malnutrition, to tissue breakdown and destruction that is caused by the energies being released from a cancer in the system, attempting to override the frequencies of the normal body. And of course, that's how cancer kills you. It encroaches far enough into your millimicronage and millimillimicronage that eventually it becomes the controlling element within the body. And as it continues to increase its hold and its own frequency development, eventually it will begin to encroach upon the micronage, and then it'll try to change the frequency, and that's where it goofs up, because then it kills you and dies in the process. Except for, of course, Chicken Little. Chicken Little never did die, as you know. They took some lymphoma, cancer cells from a lymphoma out of a woman 20-some years ago. She's died, and they're still growing them in the laboratory. This is an evidence of a group of tissues who have literally devoided themselves from the human form, and now it would be interesting to know what their frequency is, but they're living totally autonomously. No, I didn't say that, did I? No, I told you that no, that is not true. As the cancer develops, as it becomes more erratic in its development, it becomes a mutation, and it begins to interfere with the millimicronage, millimillimicronage, and micronage of the area it's growing in, and eventually it begins to affect the millimillimicronage, millimicronage, and micronage of the entire system. And when they affect it to such a point that it tries to affect the frequency, it kills the host. That's, I believe, what I just said just a minute or two ago. Now, let me see if we can pick up this next one. Now, this, I better use the same drawing so I don't run out of paper. This next one is a unique situation, and if you haven't seen any of them, or in your studies up to date, let me know. I've got several. Okay, that's where you see what appears to be now it can be in either eye, but now keep in mind that it will be in the upper inner quadrant. Okay, so if we're looking at this, this has to be the left eye that I've got drawn here. What you will see is almost a circumscribed area of a lot of vascular activity up there in that upper inner quadrant of the eye. So if you had two eyes side by side, for instance, like this and this, you would see them in these areas of both eyes, right up in here and here. All right? Those are massive fatigue congestions. Those are fatigue congestions when you see them up in there. Now, primarily, in the right eye, you're going to be looking at areas, you'll have 29 will be involved, 30, 22, 23, those will be involved, 24 will be involved, 11 and 12 will be involved. When you get over into the left eye, you'll get into 1 and 2 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 25 and 26. So you'll get into those various ranges up on your eye chart. And those are your fatigue areas. Whenever you start seeing this building up in there, you can start applying it to the fact that the body is becoming super fatigued. And for those of you who understand cranial work and everything, you may find a fatigue zone in one eye and find the other eye totally and completely clear in that area. Because you can have hemispherical fatigue rather than just total central nervous system and peripheral system fatigue. Sometimes, not after a long fast, I have, the question is, he said, have I ever seen these things after the squared pattern, which we're not on now? He said, after a fast, and I've not seen one because of the fact that I try to make the fast pretty valid for those people that I'm working with. If they were to show up, after an extended fast, it would be evidence to me that the fast was either one, extended too long, it was gone into without the proper preparation ahead of time, and that two, that there are three, that they were too depleted to be fasting at this stage anyway. So I would begin to think along these lines if I were to see them start to show up in a person after they'd had a fast. Because usually speaking, if the fast is properly supervised, you will actually see a great diminishing in the nature of the vessels in the eye, especially in these patterns that you can see in either eye. You will see a real diminishing of intensity after a properly controlled fast. It'll amaze you sometimes what a 3 to 6 day fast can pull out of a human system. Oh yeah. Well, I probably didn't say too much about it, but I have mentioned when I talked about the plans, never to put anyone on a fast until you have them properly prepared, both mentally and everything else. And talking through the plans, I even told you about certain plans that could be used to lead a person into a fast. For instance, a 3-day light diet, and if you're going to lead them into a fast, turn it around. Instead of going 500, 800, 1200 as far as the food, turn it around and go 1200, 800, 500. Think back through. Now, this next thing is kind of a funny thing. Can be found in both eyes, but for some reason, and if anyone has information why, let me know. For some reason, it shows up more frequently than the left eye than it does anywhere else. And this is your so-called fungus spots. Yeah, it can be in either eye, but for some reason it seems to show up more frequently in the left than it does in the right. I've seen them in both eyes, but you'll see it like 6 to 1 in the left eye over the right eye. And what you'll see is, and here's another thing too, it tends to be more frequently than not around the 1 area on the left eye. Now, I don't know why it groups in there, but we'll find out sooner or later. But anyway, what you'll see on this eye is just little, almost like little chicken scratches in here, just like they've been out there in the grass or in the dirt with their little foot scratching to look for a seed or a whatever. But I'm not saying that, lady. This is the left eye. It's 1 through 6, 7 through 12. Okay? Keep with me. We're a long ways into the course to be not knowing the eye chart. Now, getting back what I was saying is that here we have a situation where that they're just like chicken scratches, and they can be anywhere around the eye, but you'll see them more frequently than not around that 1 area in the left eye. They can be anywhere. I did one time find a person that had chicken scratches right in this particular area on both eyes. He had chicken scratches laying right in here. And I questioned him and questioned him and questioned him. He was from Davenport, Iowa, and found out that years before he had been treated for histoplasmosis. And of course, in most instances, it's very, very difficult to cure histoplasmosis. It will continue to cause problems for years and years and years. And there were those chicken scratches. And then it dawned on me about thoracic congestion being in this band around the eye. And it also dawned on me that in this particular pattern right here, on that particular eye, very frequently you find lung or breast congestion, primarily breast in the female. And then it dawned on me right where those chicken scratches were lying, and then it made sense why they were in there. But the biggest percentage of time, you're going to find them right in that area. Now, they'll be grouped about 1, or they'll be in zone C on the left eye. And if you find them in the right eye, very, very frequently they will, when you find them, you will not find them frequently in the right eye, but when you find them, they'll be grouped around zone 12, or around area 12 in the right eye, also zone C. So they're kind of an interesting situation, and the first time you see them, you will look at them, and it'll take you a while. If you don't remember what I told you about chicken scratches, it'll take you just a little while for it to dawn on you what you're seeing. They're just like chicken scratches right on the sclera. There ain't any color. They're just scratches, just like little scratches. They're dark enough you can see them. They can be pinkish or pinkish toward reddish, You can see them laying in there. It just looks like a little chicken was out there scratching, hunting for a seed. I've been explaining to you all this time that they're fungus, that there's an evidence that there's a fungus infection somewhere in the body. Didn't I tell you that there were fungus lines? Yeah, I think I did. I told you. I didn't say where they were at. I said there's a fungus in the body. Can you accept that? Okay, I said there's a fungus in the body. And then I went on to tell you that I have run into a couple of times where they were located, and that one time I found out that they were setting around the eye and was able to determine that there was a histoplasmosis. I did not state that there was any specific location. I just said look for them, that they tend to group more around one in the left eye, that they are chicken scratch in nature by their appearance, and that they indicate that there is some sort of a fungus involvement with the body. That's, I did not pin down if it was in the colon or any of this other stuff. I just said that they're there. No, you'll see them. You'll see them. They'll be just like that. Just like if you've taken a glass and you've run it through a number of dishwashings, to the fact you hold that glass up, and all of a sudden you can see where it's rubbed against all the other glasses. Yeah, well, you'll see all these minute scratches on them, and if you'll look and see into the corner of that eye, why, there they'll be. Now, I've got one guy, and I've never been able to verify this, but I've got one guy that says that he can tell by looking at the sclera, and he's shown me on 2 or 3 people, and so help me, I cannot figure out where he's coming from, but he swears that he can tell you what type of worm is in the body. But I have not been able to catch up with him yet on that one. Now, the next thing is infectious pockets in the eyes. These infectious pockets are found anywhere, and sometimes they will, in fact, relate themselves to a given area that you can say, uh-oh, there's an infection here, or uh-oh, there's an infection there. But sometimes they just show up anywhere around the rim of the eye, which shows that there's an infection somewhere in the body that is dumping poisons and causing the eye to respond. And they're real simple to see. A vessel starts out and turns right around and just disappears again. Goes right back in. Or it'll start out, it'll come right back around and disappear in again. Start out, turn right back around and disappear in again. Start out, turn right back around and disappear in. Now, you can see them anywhere around on the eye. Anywhere around on the eye. And in certain areas, they tend to, in fact, seem to correlate pretty well with where the infection is. Like, for instance, very, very frequently, I'll see someone with a vessel looking just like that, right at 12 o'clock. And I can say to them, do you have problems with sinus problems? Yep. How'd you know? Okay. Every once in a while, I'll see one that'll be down here at the bottom, right at 6 o'clock. It'll be going back, doing its thing. And I'll say to these people, I say, have you had any problem with your urinary bladder? Has there been any past history of this? Or, oh, yeah, or I did have, or yeah, but I thought I was over it, or yeah, it bothers me once in a while, something of that particular nature. So there are some areas in which they do, from experience, you begin to correlate them with certain things, and I'll give you a list of those that I've managed to correlate when we get into the specific eye, because they may show up in one eye, they may show up in the other eye, so we'll cover them then. But these little vessels coming out and shooting back in, looping out and looping back in, are very, very frequently found associated with infectious pockets somewhere in the body. Now, it was a unique situation that I got a chance one time to look at Doc's right eye, left eye, I'm sorry, way back in Roanoke before he went into the hospital, and Lynn Johnston did a iridology evaluation on him, and I did a sclerology evaluation on him, and we knew long before that he finally went into the hospital that he did in fact have unbelievable amount of toxicity around the lower part of the rectum, and later it showed out that there was in fact 2 cysts laying down there. So it's unique, and you will pick up on this stuff. Now, I have to take this one step further, because there's another factor that you have to look at when you see these infectious pockets, and if you see them as I've just shown them to you, that's an infectious pocket. But if you see them looking like this, in which there's little tiny vessels shooting away from them, it's usually indicative that the infection is spreading out throughout the system. Again, they can be anywhere. sometimes they'll correlate with a given area. So when you see those vessels starting to drift out from that thing, then it is usually indicative that the infectious pocket, wherever it may be in the body, is extending, that the entire system is beginning to feel the effect of it. In other words, a cellulitis, or a septicemia, or a bacteremia is beginning to develop. That's a pretty frequent pattern. You see a lot of those. You'll see a lot of these from people who have come back in from the hospital, for instance, who have had, some pretty severe vaginal infections, or who have had a very, very badly inflamed appendix before they took it out, or that had a very inflamed and altered cervix or uterus before it was removed, or that possibly may have had an infection somewhere else in the body. You begin to see these. I was around a person about a year ago that had recently survived peritonitis. However, at that particular time, I did not know about the eye, was still researching it, and I have, kicked myself 1,000 times for not mapping his eyes at that particular time, so that as I learned more, I could go back and look at them. I would have really enjoyed seeing that particular eye. Now, we've got another factor here to discuss. Okay. He did have? Okay, then we've got a set out here that we might be able to look at. Now, the next thing to